Welcome to The Lazy Girl Library, the podcast where reading is a pleasure and captivating adventures happen from the comfort of your couch. I'm your host, Darbi.
And I'm Mikayla.
And if you've ever spent more time rearranging your bookshelf than your priorities, then you, my friend, are in the right place.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, welcome to our first book talk and our second full episode.
Woohoo!
I just want to start off this episode by saying thank you so much for all the kind words and support that we've gotten so far. It can kind of be vulnerable, putting yourself out there, but you guys have been just so kind.
It's been really amazing seeing all the comments and getting all the texts and whatnot from all of our listeners. It's been so nice and so rewarding already. So thank you for the support.
The fact that we have listeners. That's you guys.
That's wild.
Someone actually wants to listen to us. It's crazy. But yeah, this is our first book talk and we are so excited. Well, actually, I don't know how excited I am to talk about this book, but we're going to be talking about it.
It'll be an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, so the book that we read in February was The Worst Best Man by Lucy Score. And so kind of what this episode will entail is basically talking all about this book. So our thoughts on the book, we're going to answer some book club-esque questions about the book, and kind of just give our ratings for it.
This is like Goodreads audio version kind of thing.
Basically, yeah. And it's a lot easier for me to vocalize my thoughts than type it out. So
absolutely.
You're going to hear it all.
Yeah. This is a great little snippet of what we talk about on the daily all the time, which inspired this podcast.
Yeah, so. This truly is book club. This is exactly what would happen if you were sitting with us on the couch instead of sitting on your own couch listening to us.
Hi all, future Mikayla here editing the pod. I realized as editing this that it might be helpful to add some context to the book for those of you not looking to read but still want to follow along. So I'm going to read the book description for you just to add a bit of context. So, The Worst Best Man. The bride is a doll, the groom is the perfect gentleman, but the rest of the wedding party, they're the stuff of nightmares. Rich? Check. Vapid, double check. Entitled, not enough checks in the world. But maid of honor Francesca Baranski takes her duties seriously. Kidnapped groom, she's got this. Rude attendees, just watch her handle them. So when she meets the best man with a big attitude and an even bigger checkbook, yeah, there's no way she's gonna let that pretentious, judgmental jackhole ruin her friend's wedding, no matter how sexy he is. At least that was the plan. Aidan Kilborn doesn't do long-term relationships. He's busy ruling the business world and has yet to find a woman he can get along with for more than a month. Conquering the unconquerable is basically his bread and butter, and he hasn't met a challenge that he can't win. But Francesca Baranski, this smart-mouthed girl from Brooklyn, may just be his downfall. And now back to our regularly scheduled program.
Well, on that note, let's hop on in.
Warning, book spoilers ahead. Please head to the description and show notes to find where to skip to. You have been warned.
So, Mikayla, what were your initial thoughts on the book?
If I had one word to describe this book, I would say it was lackluster. Honestly, I think you and I can both agree it did not live up to expectations at all. When you read the back of it, it just didn't match the whole story. Like, it did, but it didn't. Because it was one of those things that when I first read the back of the book, I had a thought of what it was going to be like. And then when you're reading it, you're like, this is absolutely nothing like the back of the book. But then today, I went back and read the back of the book again. I'm like, well, I guess it kind of is.
Okay, yeah, I was going to mention that later, but yes. I feel the same way. When I read the back of the book, maybe I just skimmed it, but I was very excited. I thought I knew what I was going to read, and then we started reading, and I was like, what? This is not the book that I wanted to read or thought I was gonna be reading.
Yep. So it definitely, it threw me for a loop for sure. I had a bunch of theories, as I do, about what was going to be happening throughout this book, in which none of them happened, but that's because really nothing happened in this book. So
no, yeah.
It was pretty disappointing.
Yeah, I really feel like I read multiple short stories.
Yes.
It felt like, it wasn't one cohesive story to me. It felt like two different stories. And so this definitely wasn't my fave, but it wasn't my least favorite book either. I've definitely read worse books.
Oh, for sure.
But I think it's hard when your expectations aren't met, and my expectations were not met.
Yeah. I think that's a great, like, way to encapsulate this book, if that's the right word. Maybe I made the word up.
Well, I know the meaning of your made-up word.
Perfect, as long as that works. Expectations were not met. It's not that it was a bad book, but you go in with certain expectations, and when they're not met, then you get really disappointed. And I think, that's exactly what happened with this book. So, did you have a favorite part, though, from it?
So, for this podcast, I tried to think of a favorite part. I really liked the beginning of the book with the wedding content, because that's what I thought the book was going to be about, these two individuals and their relationship throughout the, like, wedding process. So that was my favorite part, was the wedding content in the beginning of the book, because that's what closely resembled my expectations for the book. And I also did like the unique twist of there being a kidnapping during the wedding. Like, yes, that was like weird to me and was like, okay, I guess this is where we're going. But I still liked it because it was still part of the wedding. And then a little side note of like things I liked about the book. I did like whenever Aiden interacted with Frankie's family, because Aiden was just so sweet.
Yeah, he was.
He was really sweet. So I liked him, like, as a character. Like, he was nice.
Yeah.
But again, I didn't think he was going to be nice.
Right.
So it did take some getting used to. But I liked when he was, like, with her family, especially her brothers.
Yeah. No, he was definitely my favorite part of this whole book. Aiden was such a sweetheart. But no, I agree with you. My true favorite part of this book was the wedding. I think because it reminded me so much of, like, the ridiculous rom-coms you used to watch, where it's like the hijinks that was ensuing was so, like, out of the box crazy. The fact that, like, the groom was getting kidnapped and Frankie's just like, I'm gonna dress up as a maid and, like, go in and, like, try to save him, and they're all, like, so nonchalant about this entire thing and making it more dramatic than it was.
And then you had the little kid that was, like, taking him on a dirt bike.
Exactly.
That was definitely, like, rom-com-esque of, like, the random character.
It's so, but, like, even though it was so ridiculous and, like, out there, that was the best part for me, because it was just kind of, like, it was just fun. It was funny, and it was very much like what we were kind of, like, expecting with the wedding, but it was shocking how quickly the wedding ended in the book. And I was kind of disappointed, because if the rest of the wedding was going to be like that and have all the hijinks, then that would have been, I think, a little bit more enjoyable for me.
Yeah, when I started reading it, and I, like, it literally jumped from, like, engagement party to, like, wedding, and I was like, whoa. And I was like, the wedding's happening right now. I wonder how she's going to make it last the whole book.
Yep.
Well, it doesn't.
Yep.
It doesn't even last, like, till halfway.
Yep. I thought, and, like, as we were reading, I'm thinking, like, okay, well, maybe, like, the kidnapping goes long or something like that, and so they have to reschedule the wedding, so then it's, like, all the hijinks before, like, the real wedding at the end. No, that was not.
I don't know if you want to talk about this now, but what were some of your theories? Or do you want to talk about that later?
I can talk about it now. Yeah, there's one theory that I really had that I think I read far too much into it. But I have it marked. It was on page 137 at the end of the wedding when she's talking with Aiden, and she basically is like, he's acting, like, so nonchalant about the whole situation. Like, it wasn't that big a deal. Like, my brother wasn't going to hurt Chip at all. Like, and taking my time to, like, figure out what was going to happen, or, like, how to, like, gain leverage back from his brother, basically. Aiden was. And Frankie's like, yeah, but you didn't know for sure that was going to happen. Like, you left your friend in danger for hours before, like, going and doing anything about it to save him, just assuming that he was going to be safe, and, like, assuming within your family that these things, because it's, like, so normal for you, but newsflash, like, it's not normal. I thought for sure the way that the author was writing about this was foreshadowing this happening with Frankie, that they were going to go through this love story, that they're, like, you know, falling in love, whatever, then maybe they get into a really big fight, and then whether it's the brother or somebody else kidnaps Frankie as leverage for Aiden, like, whether it's for money, for business, whatever, but that she was going to be in actual danger, and that Aiden was then gonna have to, like, face that and, like, figure out how to, like, work fast to get Frankie back and to save Frankie because it was foreshadowed in the beginning. So that's what I was expecting fully going into this.
That would have been way better than what did happen with the brother.
I don't know. It was, so, and this is a great, like, little snippet into, like, my brain and how my brain works when I'm reading as the conspiracy theorist. But sometimes
I didn't think twice.
It works against
me
though, because it makes you like even more disappointed when things don't work out that way. So
I do think that the groom, what was his name? Do you remember?
Chip, I think.
Chip. I do think that Chip and Aiden could have explained a little bit more to Frankie, like during the kidnapping, that like, oh, like, yeah, this is insane, but like we know the guy, like it's fine.
Absolutely.
She definitely seemed a little more like crazy during that because like, I don't know, there was some miscommunication. It could have been a little less hectic once they did know, like, that it was his brother.
Well, and they kind of, like, just skimmed over it even at the end when it, like, after the wedding and Chip's fine and Aiden's, like, trying to explain to Frankie, like, how this is normal. They left the reader, I felt like, a little bit more confused. Like, it kind of clears things up so you, like, can make assumptions about, like, okay, I guess this is a thing. But they didn't, like, truly explain, like... the nuances of why this was like, this happens all the time, or like tell another story of when this has happened before kind of thing.
Also the fact that Frankie was like seething at Aiden for like not knowing, or for knowing and not telling, yet Chip was like clearly happy, like, and they got married and stuff, but she was still so angry. It was like, okay, you're literally angry for no reason. Everyone else has moved on. Like, it's fine.
Yep,
like,
absolutely.
That was, I think, when it started to, like, really dig at me of, like, oh, she's annoying.
Well, and I think that gets into both our least favorite part of this book, which was Frankie. She sucks.
She was so bad.
She's the worst. She holds these grudges over people for so long. And like you said, like, Chip and Prue, who are getting married, like, did not hold it against Aiden whatsoever, which is like, yeah, you should stick up for your friend to a point. But to hold such a grudge and, like, to be so angry with him for so long about this, like, throughout the whole book, and, like, I don't know, she just was... It's just, like, it was ridiculous.
Also, like, making other people's problems your own.
Yes.
Like, no offense, like, I don't know if you're trying to be a good friend, but you're not. Like, that's not your issue to hold on to. Or, like, in the end, like, Aiden's whole, like, issue of he's the one that had broken up Chip and... What's her name?
Prue.
Prue, yeah, sorry. Like... how he had made Chip and Prue break up, and she was so angry at that. Like, that felt like such... Like, that shouldn't have been an issue. And I get that Prue was, like, depressed during that time or really sad. But, like, that was Prue's issue, not your own. Sure, you helped her, but, like, I don't know. All of it seemed like, woe is me. And it's like,
the entire book. It was constant. Well, and what I hated, too, is how, like, she was almost so, like, pretentious about it, and like how she's a working class girl, and you know, she can't afford all these luxuries or whatever, but she's the one almost like holding the grudge about it, or like having the chip on her shoulder about it, whereas like a lot of the people throughout the book did not care. Like, they weren't judging her for it, she was judging herself for it, or putting the judgment of herself in other people where it didn't exist.
And there's a way to do that character but have it be graceful still. Like, there are plenty of like the billionaire tropes where the girl is like very proud of, like, you know, having to work for stuff, but it comes off way better than Frankie came off. Like, it just did not correlate.
No,
so
it didn't.
Frankie for sure was my least favorite part of this book, as well as the fact that the wedding was over before it even started.
She ruined, like, one of my favorite tropes, too, because I love the billionaires trope, and it was a surprising version of it, because Aiden didn't end up being, like, you know, the bad guy that they normally are.
Yeah.
But she just took me so much out of the romance because she was so concerned with, like, the fact that he's, like, this billionaire, she's a working girl, or he's not looking for a relationship, so she's just gonna get her heart broken, or she doesn't want this or whatever, but she does. She just couldn't, I don't know. The whole thing was just infuriating for me to try to read through. And the fact that that was the majority of the book made me, like, dread picking up this book to finish it, kind of thing. Yeah. Because I just didn't want to deal with her.
Yeah, she, like, I also like the billionaire trope. I think. I've only ever read, like, 2. This one and another one. And I actually didn't love the other one. So maybe I don't like the billionaire trope. Or maybe they just haven't been great books. But Frankie for sure ruined a lot of it for me. I also was hoping for more of, like, a grumpy sunshine vibe, but was not anticipating Frankie being the grumpy one.
True, yeah.
So I thought, like, it was going to be more, like, brooding billionaire and less, like, spoiled girl.
Right.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, well, because that's normally what they are. And so I wasn't mad about, like, the flop of it.
Yeah.
Being, like, she was the grumpy one and he was the sunshine. Because it's, like, when you go into these books expecting what we expected. And so the fact that the author kind of flipped the script on us, I appreciate, like, the kind of, like, thought of it, and it made me love Aiden even more.
Yeah.
But it made me hate Frankie even more too. So yeah, no, I do. I love the billionaire tropes. It's one of my favorites. But I don't know. Just it wasn't the book. It was Frankie and the way that
it was a little bit of the book.
It was a little bit. Well, it was the plot. It was the fact that the plot didn't go anywhere. Aiden helped. Frankie didn't, and I think Frankie went out.
Like every other character helped. And Frankie didn't. Even the annoying bridesmaids, like they were better than Frankie.
They added comedic relief for something. Prue was like, "You're being absolutely ridiculous and stupid," and being like the reality check for her.
I'm happy. I'm married. Like I think she literally says that at the end. She's like, "I'm okay. Like we're together now. It doesn't matter."
Yep.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't. So what did you think about, like, the writing styles? Because I personally enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty simple, easy to follow. Like, I could visualize things well. And I think each character had a distinct personality, which I liked, because I feel like sometimes you read books and they, like, almost, like, blend, like, they're too similar. But I felt each person, like, had their own vibe, like, they were their own person. So I did like that. But again, going back to, like, where our expectations got flipped, like, rereading the back of the book where it says, like, the bride is a doll, the groom is a perfect gentleman, but the rest of the wedding party, they're the stuff of nightmares. And, like, I don't know.
It definitely makes you think that she's going to go into, like, all the different nuances of the wedding.
Yeah, and then I read the author's note, which made me, like, understand it a little bit more. Like,
I never read the author's notes.
I read it sometimes, but so she talks. Honestly, I'm just going to read it real quick because it's like half a page. Dear reader, where do I start? As always, I started this book with an idea of where it would go. I thought this was going to be just a light, funny rom-com set in paradise. Oh, wow, we did too. And then Frankie and Aiden got deeper. Their conflict got more intense. Their families got more complicated. Basically, I fell head over heels for these two and their hot mess of a non-relationship. I was so sure Frankie would get her heart broken, and then she ended up doing the breaking. It's like I have no control over these people. I hope you loved them as much as I did. I set the wedding in Barbados because it's one of my favorite places to go with Mr. Lucy. We went specifically so I could soak up the research for this book, and some sun, and all the rum. The white sandy beaches, the turquoise water, the insane minivan public transportation. It's amazing. Anyway, if you loved Frankie and Aiden, please feel free to hop over to Amazon and leave a gushing review. If you hated them and you're still reading this note, I admire your commitment. That's me. Do you want to hang out and be BFFs? Blah, blah, blah. So after reading that, it did, like, I, like, understood the book more after reading that note. And I honestly, like, have a little more respect for the book.
Sure. Because
she's saying that, like, this turned out different than even she expected. Which that's, like, okay, like, that's cool. But maybe, like, update, like, the expectations of readers. Because it kind of, like, I feel like our expectations were set up for that, like, funny rom-com. So I do like her writing style, and after reading the author's note, I think I like her a little bit more, but I don't know. It just was...
Because the back of the book makes it seem like it's all centered around this wedding versus really the wedding was just how they met, and then the rest of the book is about them. So I think if it wasn't so focused on the wedding, like talking about the wedding party being stuff of nightmares, whatever, which it does. It makes you think that it's going to take you through the whole wedding process, and where they're forced like to be together and they're slowly learning about each other kind of thing. Isn't that? So if you set expectations a little bit more, then I think maybe it would have been not as disappointing as it was.
Yeah. I do like reading how she went to Barbados for research.
Yeah, that's cool.
I really forget a lot about how authors have to do so much research. Which I don't know why I don't think about that, because it's like, how would they know all these things? Right. But it's, like, so neat. Like, do you ever think about how they do so much research just to help with, like, the setting of a book or to make things accurate?
I forget about it, too, honestly, because when you think about, like, reading fiction, you think about it being, like, made up. So, like, a perfect example of this is in Percy Jackson, Rick Riordan, the author, talks about the St. Louis Arch. And in the book, spoilers if you haven't read this, which, I mean, it's been out for a long time. I'm pretty sure, most people know.
There's multiple shows and movies, too. It's fine.
It's been years. Where, like, Percy is, like, fighting a monster or whatever at the top of the arch, and he jumps out the window into the river. Well, Rick had never been to St. Louis and didn't realize how far the arch actually is from the river.
I heard about that.
For that to be a thing. So when they readapted it into the show, they had to find, like, a workaround, obviously, and, like, kind of update the story a little bit so that way he could, like, make it to the river in time. So things like that just make me think, like, yeah, you can talk about real places, but because it's fiction and you're making things up, I never think that, like, people would actually go and do research to make it realistic, which I appreciate. So good on her.
Yeah. I think about it more when it's like a story set in like medieval time or when it's in a certain time period. But when it's like something in the present, something like this, like a funny romance book, like I do not think about people doing research. So it is really neat, and I could never be an author. Oh no. But yeah, so that's cool.
The mind mapping that you have to do too. And so it's so interesting too, the way she talks about how she started off as one, like the book going one way, but then as she's writing, she starts taking it a completely different way. It's almost like the characters are developing the book for her and not her writing the book itself. And I've heard of a lot of authors that like have that happen for them too. And so I find that fascinating as well. Cool. And it's gotta be cool for them, for like kind of like a validating feeling almost for them, that their characters have like such a hold on them that I'm sure that it'll have a hold on like the readers too, if they can influence the book that much for the person actually writing it.
I mean, our girl Sarah J. Maas, of course I'm going to bring her up, but I think it was one of the Crescent City books where she wrote it, and then she literally she wrote the whole book and then she started over because she was like, no, this isn't right, and she rewrote it. They just know. So I don't know.
I would love to like have like a deep conversation with an author and like how they plan out books too, because like that she had to have like this written out process, and I'm sure every author is different in like their planning process, but like, do you like map it out? Do you just like draft it? Do you bullet point list it? And then like as you're writing, like, and you realize that, okay, so it's not Aiden who's going to be doing the breaking of the heart, it's Frankie. Like, do you go back and revise then your like draft or mind map and to then go back and start writing the story again? Or do you just let the story go and you're just writing and you'll go back and edit later kind of thing? I'd be fascinated to learn more about that.
Maybe we can interview someone. Yes.
Any aspiring authors out there, hit us up.
On Lazy Girl Library. That's our Instagram and everything.
Absolutely everything. Find us anywhere.
Lazy Girl Library. But would you read another book by Lucy Score?
I think I would. And I looked up because I'm horrible with author names. So I didn't realize that I actually have a couple of her books on my TBR on Goodreads until I was like looking up other books by her. And then I came across them and was like, oh, I didn't realize. So obviously like some of them intrigue me, and so I'm interested. And especially because for me, if the writing style wasn't bad, like if I enjoyed like the writing of it and it was just the story itself I didn't like, I'm more willing to give another book by that author a shot, because maybe it's just this specific story. I mean, there's so many books out there and by authors where it's like some are hits, some are misses. So I'll give her like maybe one or two more books to see whether it's something I want to like truly is like start pursuing or like keep up with like her latest releases. But it seems like she has a lot out by the looks of it.
Yeah, I would definitely read another one of her books because she does seem to be pretty popular, have a few popular books. So I don't know. Part of me is like, maybe we're being too hard and we were just wanting a different story. Like maybe we just went into it with our own wants. But we didn't write the book. So maybe we just gotta read the back. Because it wasn't that bad. It was just different than what we expected.
Right. Well, it did get boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's like,
but the beginning was great.
Right.
Really, that
Right.
wedding part was so good.
and that's what I hold on to. It gives me hope for like all these
Mm-hmm.
other books, is because it's not the writing, because like she obviously can write a compelling story.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way that this story took off, and I feel like it lost its plot.
Mm-hmm.
I
feel like she was starting to use like spice to keep the story going,
Yeah.
or to like make it move along,
Mhm.
which that doesn't work for me.
It doesn't for me
No.
either. I skimmed them because
Oh my gosh, I
just
skipped
didn't.
them all.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me if I'm not connected to the
Like,
characters.
what's the actual plot? Like, what am I
Exactly.
reading for?
Mhm.
I don't know.
No, it wasn't for me in that sense. But it does, yeah, the little beginning part gave me hope moving forward. And just so you guys are aware, she is the author of The Things We Never Got Over, which was on my list. I think that's the one with the blue cover and the daisies on it that I've seen all over TikTok. So to go through the list that she has on her book, it's the Knock 'em Out series, Benevolence series, Riley Thorne novels, Blue Moon series, standalones, bootleg spring series. There's so many, and within each series there's like at least 3 to 5 books, if not more. So there's a lot out there by her. So
I want to know how old she is.
I don't know, we can do a deep dive.
Yeah, I kind of... Hold on,
Let's
I'm
look her
gonna
up.
look her up real quick. Because, like, that's a lot of books. And I'm wondering, like, is she just whipping them out? Oh, she seems, like, younger. Okay. Authors are not like other celebrities. It doesn't just list their age on when you look them up. Lucy Score age. It says at 13, she stole her first romance novel off her mother's bookshelf and never looked back.
Oh, she's cute.
She's cute.
Yeah, she does look younger.
She was born January 30th, 1980. So let me do some math. So she's 44.
Wow, she's cranked out a lot
She has
of
cranked out a
books.
lot of books.
Good for her.
Yeah, that is really cool. But then also, it makes me a little weary of, are you taking enough time while you're writing the
Right.
books for the story?
Are you just whipping them out, or are you thinking through it all?
Mm-hmm. But as I said, I could never be an author.
Nope.
So I don't know the process.
Respect to them, for sure.
And I do want to give another one of her books a try. I think it could be better. Because
Yeah.
I really did like that wedding section.
Yeah. I think that's definitely something that we both think, like, wished happened more, was just, like, more of the wedding, or more of something, just more plot
Yeah.
than just the relationship and how Frankie sucked throughout it. So,
Yeah. Speaking of the relationship, did the romance work?
No, not for me. It didn't. And it's because Frankie was too selfish. She was too self-centered. She was just awful, honestly, to Aiden the whole time. And so as much as the romance worked for me for Aiden, like, I fell in love with Aiden. So
Yeah.
in that romance way, yes. But for the book itself, no, it wasn't. I couldn't relate to them. I didn't even, like, on an emotional level, connect with the relationship at all, which I think is important when you're writing a romance, to, like, you feel it too, and you feel giddy when you're reading about it. But no, she took me out of it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I guess it works to an extent because the author makes it work. Like,
Yeah.
she's the one who writes it. But Aiden totally deserved better. And, like, Frankie just needed someone different. Like, if she was going to be so stuck up about someone who's so nice to her, then, like, maybe she deserved someone toxic.
But you know what did work for me? The bromance between Aiden and Frankie's brothers.
That was, like I
Loved
said in
it.
the beginning, that was one of my favorite parts.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it was such a good dynamic. Honestly, like, well, I don't know her other books, but if she did a spin-off, like, with one of her brothers as, like, the
Yeah.
romance, like, one of the lead guys, I would read that, because they both seemed really, like, sweet and, like, cool,
Yeah.
and I loved reading that part.
Yeah, I love the way that they were, like, really protective of Frankie, but then also could see her flaws, not so protective and so, like, overbearing about it, that, like, when anything happened or Frankie got upset with Aiden, like, they didn't take it to heart against Aiden either, knowing how Frankie can be. Because I think that's a really fine balance, just, like, in life too, because obviously people have flaws and sometimes people are going to be wrong. And I feel like in a lot of, like, books or romances or movies, whatever that you watch, a lot of times, like, especially family can like, take away from the other character, or, like, shun them because of one thing that happened that maybe wasn't even their fault, because they're only getting one side of the story. It's just because of their loved one, which obviously you want to support your loved one, but I think that the brothers handled that dynamic and that relationship beautifully by supporting their sister, but also recognizing the flaws and that there are two sides to each story.
Yeah, and I think it helped for Aiden's, like, character arc in a sense of, like, it was almost, like, found family. Like, they were so kind to him, treated them as a brother should when he had his own, like, awful relationship with his brother or half-brother.
Absolutely.
So I think for Aiden's development, too, like, the brothers were so good for him, whereas Frankie was not good for him.
Right. Gave him the family that he never had, but was still working on the relationship that he deserves. So.
Yeah. Also, something I wish that happened that I want to share. In the book, I wish that we had started... So this would have been my perfect expectations of the book. Like, for this book to have...
Right, paint me a picture, Darby.
Yeah, for this book to have been 5 stars, it would have started at the beginning of the wedding process and went through, like, each wedding event. So, yes, it started at the engagement party, but we could even go back to, like, the proposal or, like, to when they're being asked, and, like, that's when they're introduced. And then, like, each thing is its own, like, interaction. And so, like... maybe at the wedding dress or when the bridesmaids are buying their dress, Aiden shows up for some, like, snobby rich reason, or vice versa. Like, Frankie has to go to the suit fitting because Prue can't go. And then that's when, like, Aiden, like, does something. Or that's when they have their, like, little moments of getting to meet. And, like, Aiden's, like, kind of being an asshole, but, like, like, a hot one. Yeah. And then that's when they develop, like, a connection, like, during those moments.
He, like, buys her bridesmaid's dress for her, and she gets so mad at him. She's like, I can take care of myself.
Yes, and then finally the wedding's at the end, and then, like, during the kidnapping of the groom, and at the ending, like, this is when they get deep, and during the kidnapping is when they finally, like, understand each other, and, like, the hating, like, really, like, this is where it, like, finally, like, goes away. Yeah. So not, like that would have been my perfect scenario. I don't know if I explained it well.
Sounds like a 5-star book to me, honestly.
Thank you. That is what I wanted. So basically a whole new story, except for the wedding kidnapping part. I just wanted that at the end. Same
like little bit, just we wanted all the extra details in between it. So I completely agree. And I would read that book, honestly. That's what we expected. And I think that you definitely should write a book something like that. So, because you could.
You know, someone can steal my idea. Take it and write it, because I can't. But just send me a free copy and I'll read it. Do you want to kind of, like, break down each character, like, talk about maybe each character and some of our favorite parts about them and least favorite?
Sure. My favorite part about Aiden was never willing to give up. Like, he knew what he wanted and he was going to do absolutely everything in his power to get it. But contrary to typical billionaire trope guys, he was so respectful about it too. He wasn't, like, super alpha male, like, you know. He's kind of like
you've been reading Crescent City. Yeah, exactly. Alpha male.
He wasn't like, I mean, he starts off, like, some of his thoughts in the beginning here kind of like, I always get what's mine, or like, I just want you, whatever, like, kind of start like that. But you come to realize that it's like, it's the painting on the outside, not what's truly on his inside. And that he's just, like, determined that he loves Frankie and is going to do anything and wants Frankie. And I loved that about him. I don't even know if I have a negative for him. The thing I don't like, maybe just, like, the way that he dealt with his family and, like, the way he dealt with the wedding, where he's, like, so nonchalant about it, like, this is normal, because it's clearly not normal. But even then, I can't fault him for that, because that's just kind of, like, the world that he comes from, and that's just how you have to handle that in that world, I guess, or the world that Lucy made.
Yeah.
So, no flaws for me.
Yeah. I think my favorite part about Aiden was, like, the way his insecurities came through when he would ask Frankie's brothers for advice. Like, that was really cute. And so I really liked, I just liked their whole dynamic, and the fact that he was okay enough to, like, ask for help. Right. Like, he liked Frankie so much, and he wasn't a hypocrite or too snobby to say, like, I need help. Like, how do I get her? So I really liked that about him. Something negative about Aiden, I guess a flaw in his insecurities was, like, being too scared to tell Frankie certain things, or, like, at the wedding when he wasn't, like, explaining enough about his brother, which I get they had just met then, so it was, like, harder. But I guess that would be a flaw, is that, like, he definitely could have explain. Like, he could have dug himself out of the holes that he put himself in really
absolutely.
quickly.
But at the same time, too, Frankie really didn't give him the time of day to even try.
This is true. I'm not going to list all the things I didn't like about Frankie because it was a lot.
The list is too long.
But something that I did like was her family and friends.
Yes. Yep. That about sums it up.
Yeah.
No, I'm trying to think. Something I like about Frankie, I appreciate that she is willing to go to bat for her friend and, like, put herself out on the line and, like, make sure that her friend is having the most amazing day. Like, I appreciate that as much as it kind of went too much to the extreme. And she wouldn't, like, believe her friend when her friend was like, this is okay. She kind of, like, she took the grudge on that she thought that her friend should have had. Yeah. And I didn't appreciate that part. But the intent behind it and looking out for her, I can appreciate.
She was a very good maid of honor.
Yes.
She did her duty. She did her role. She found the groom.
Yes.
So I will give her props there. She definitely cares for Prue. Sometimes a little too much.
Yeah. I did love Prue, though.
Prue and Chip, I liked them both. Yeah.
I think Chip was just kind of a flat character for me, but it didn't, it was not in a bad way, because like obviously he wasn't meant to be like a super dynamic character within the plot, so I don't hold that against like the book at all. He was just kind of like the fun little golden retriever boy that throughout the whole thing, like, everything's fine and this is fun and I love, my wife.
Yeah.
But Prue for me I loved because as much as she was part of like the super rich society and like is used to certain things that like Frankie wasn't, she was never afraid to like invite Frankie to things or to pull Frankie into her world, and was never wanted Frankie to be anybody but herself in those situations too, and like would stand up for her when necessary, which I think was really important. I think that she also wasn't afraid to put Frankie in her place, so like on those times too when Frankie's being stupid and like holding the grudge for Prue that Prue wasn't even having, she would tell her like she would flat out be like, you're being stupid right now. And I think Prue was a really good friend. And I think it is a really good making of a friend, like, in the real world, too. Yeah. Had a lot of good qualities.
I liked how Prue wasn't, like, stereotypical, like, rich girl, like how the bridesmaids were portrayed. Like, she was genuine. And like you said, like, she can just stand up for herself, have her own, like, values, like, be a great girl, and also really like nice things and really have a good expensive taste, and that's fine too. So I liked how she was portrayed.
Confident in her own self to not have to be worried about the insecurities of anything else.
Yeah. So. And I liked Chip too, but again, he was also just kind of like passerby. Yeah.
But their relationship was really cute.
Yeah, you could definitely tell that they loved each other.
Yeah, yeah. It was cute though. It was cute to read through, and you're kind of like, aw. And you could see it because like I said, the wedding part really reminded me of rom-com. So it was really easy for me to picture it all, and like just seeing the puppy dog love between the two of them and being in their own bubble, regardless of what happened, is such a rom-com thing. So it was so easy for me to like visualize too and be like, aw.
I wish we could have seen more of the bridesmaids and the groomsmen dynamic. Like I feel like we learned nothing about the groomsmen, but I feel like they had potential to be like cool, fun characters, even if they were like snobby rich guys. Like they, I think, could have been portrayed like funny, and like they could have added to the story.
Yeah, and she kind of sets you up in that way where you think that they're going to be more involved because she's telling you a little, like giving you like bits and pieces about them, but then it never really comes to fruition, other than like the one bridesmaid who like causes Frankie to like dip from the relationship because of what she thought was happening, which you could kind of guess was going to happen too.
The author does do a good job of setting up the bridesmaids to make you hate them, because I definitely did not want to spend a second with them. No, but the groomsmen, they seemed cool. Like I'd want to hang out with them.
But she did do a good job too with the bridesmaids, where you really hated the one that ended up causing the problem later. Yeah, the other two she made just annoying enough for you to sympathize with Frankie being in that situation, but not hate them enough to where they're kind of more like the comic relief or like, the funny part of the book for like when they did pop up occasionally. So, and
then for Aiden's family, obviously the author wants you to love like Bio Mom, and I definitely did love Bio Mom. She's like super nice, super sweet. I felt almost like we didn't need everybody else in the like, we only needed, like, one of them. Like, just the brother or just the dad or just the stepmom. Like, having all three of them be, like, the big bad family, it was almost, like, too much. Like, I didn't need all of them. Like, I got it. I understand. Like, he doesn't love his family. Like, they're not great.
Right.
But I don't think I needed each of them, if that makes sense. To, like, still sympathize with Aiden and, like, to see why he is insecure about things.
Right. And it's kind of like she threw them in there to help, because it's kind of like the stereotypical thing with, like, the billionaires trope to have in there. But I agree, because she was doing something different with the billionaires trope than every other book, I don't think it was necessary to pull in that thing that everybody else does. Yeah. Because you're switching it up a little bit, so you stick with that. Like, be strong in that. Don't, like, take the same things from other, like, books, like that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't add to the story at all, I don't think.
Yeah. And then finally, Frankie's family. I liked all of them. I forget why she got annoyed with her mom, but she was really annoyed with her mom because she would always, like, want to set her up. Yeah.
And, like, constantly, like, not wanting her to be by herself, which, like, yeah, is annoying. I think we all can, like, relate to that. Or at least maybe not everybody, but it's like a normal thing for, like, moms to want and to do.
My mom definitely, anytime there was a cute guy, would, like, say something to me. Or there's this one story that comes to mind. Sorry, I'm going on a little side tangent. But there was this one time we were at this store, like, Played Again Sports, where they sell used stuff. And I'd asked the guy at the register, who was about my age, maybe a little bit older. I was like, hey, do you guys have a spike ball set? And he was like, oh, no, we don't. And then my mom was like, oh, well, maybe you could text us if you get one in. And I was like, weird. And then she was like, okay, Darby, give him your number. And I was like, Mom! And so he did text me, but I didn't text him back. But I was like, okay, Mom, maybe let me, like, I'll hop in there. It was really funny.
It's funny, too, listening to that, because you're such an outgoing person. So normally it's, like, the moms with, like, the more shy people that don't put themselves out there, that they're putting themselves out there for them. But you're such an outgoing, bubbly personality that, like, it's funny that your mom did that for you, too.
It is. She's a character. She's funny. I love her. I wouldn't want to grow up any other way. I think it helped to make me as outgoing as I am, seeing her be outgoing and
absolutely
silly.
I mean, there's so many times my sister and I would get so mad at my mom because, like, we would be out somewhere at whatever, the grocery store, and be like, oh my gosh, that cashier is so cute, and then we'd get to the checkout line and my mom would literally go, my daughters think you're so cute, we were just talking about it.
Oh my gosh, okay, my mom never did that.
Would be mortified. Like, how could you do this to us? And it's like, we were like middle school too, so it was like even worse. We're like, oh my god, I'm gonna die right here. Like, how could you?
That's funny. I feel like my mom was more, instead of saying that we thought they were cute, being like, oh, you're so handsome, dear. Like her saying, like, oh, you're so cute, and me being like, Mom. But if she had said that, like, if my mom had done that, I would have been like crawling out of my skin, like,
And she never means anything wrong by it. Like, she was just trying to make them feel good about themselves, you know, but oh my gosh. And my sister and I would get so mad at her for it. So I think everybody can relate to that type of mom. But I don't think, I don't know, it didn't warrant all of the annoyance that Frankie had about it too, and like being so hard on her mom about it.
Yeah. Also, I get that, like, the dad was supposed to be, like, distant, but he was almost, like, too, like...
I don't even remember the dad, which I think hones in your point.
Yeah. Because when they go over for lunch, I think he's, like, sitting in front of the TV, and he literally says, like, nothing the whole time. But I feel like with the brothers and the mom, like, I get what she was going for, but I feel like he still needed to have a little more, like, family priority aspect to him. I liked her family.
Yeah. Her family is great. His family is not. But that's okay, because that was meant to be.
Yeah.
So, it did its purpose. So what are your, like, final thoughts on the book? Let's get to our star ratings.
So I gave it a 2.7, and I think that's being generous. It just didn't meet my expectations, and like I said earlier, I think it tried to have the spice and smut carry it, which, like, it's a no for me, dog. But Aiden is what carried it for me.
Yep. Yeah, for me too. I gave it, you were much more generous than I was. I gave it a 1 star, which we can get into our star ratings too. I think in another episode we should definitely do that, how we rate books differently. But yeah, overall, I was not a fan. It was just disappointing. And for me, if a book feels more like a chore to finish, then it's an immediate 1-star for me.
Yeah. That was the book. It sucked.
It did, but it's okay. Lucy, don't take it personally. We will try out other books because we did enjoy your writing. It's just this specific story that wasn't for us. It's not our cup of tea.
Yeah.
But let us know if it was your cup of tea, if you read with us. Leave us comments on our Instagram at Lazy Girl Library. You can also reach out at our website on our comments form, lazygirllibrary.com. Let us know what you thought.
Yeah, I know this was a little repetitive because unfortunately this was a book we didn't like, and so there were just a few things that we really didn't like about it, but
it was kind of it was a lackluster book, so not a whole lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Other than the things that we didn't like.
We are getting ready to pick out our book for next month. So again, keep updated on our Instagram, Lazy Girl Library, so you can be the first to know what book we are going to read next month for our book club. And we will probably mention it on the next podcast as well, what we're going to be reading.
Stay tuned.
This was so much fun doing our first book club and book talk together. And I'm excited to talk about a book that we do like with you guys. That'll be fun. And then stay tuned because next week will be a bookish podcast. So meaning we are not going to be talking about books no, we're going to talk about books. But we're not going to
podcast.
But we're not going to be talking about a specific book and doing a book club, but we are going to just be talking about a bookish topic.
So stay tuned for that. Come back, please. We love you. But speaking of books that we do like, or maybe don't, I don't know, we can get into our borrows and returns.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Borrows and returns. So, unfortunately, mine is the exact same as last podcast.
Life's hard. It's sometimes, it just is what it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have a lot of time to read. Other times you get no time to read.
I was sick this past week and I had my birthday before I got sick.
Yes,
so
happy birthday, Darby.
Thank you. 26. So yeah, not a lot of time to be reading. So House of Flame and Shadow is one of my borrows that I'm still reading, and that's almost 1,000 pages. So I'm halfway through with it, or a little past halfway through. Thank you. So that one I knew that was going to take me a while. And then How to Win Friends and Influence People, I'm still just like, that one's more like a back burner book for me. So this one might stay in my borrows for quite some time, because this one I'm just kind of like, it's just like a touch and go book.
Yeah.
And
I feel like it's meant to be that kind of book too.
I think so, yeah. Unless, I'm sure there are some people that really want to hone in on these habits, but for me, it's more of reminders.
Right.
So that's kind of why I'm reading the book. It's just kind of like a refresh, and yeah, good reminders for me. And then Returns, again, Everybody Always was the last book that I finished by Bob Goff. I love that man. I think of him as another granddad. He's so cute.
Yeah.
And just sweet and loves Jesus.
Aww. My borrows, same one from last week, A House of Sky and Breath, but because I did finish the book club book, I started reading that one a little bit more. That one's getting good. It surprised me a little bit. Because normally, or at least the first book, it took a while. It was a long, build up. Whereas this one, I'm maybe 20% the way through it. And I had one of those oh my gosh moments when I was reading. I was literally sitting here on the couch and I read it, and I'm home alone and I'm talking to myself out loud, because that's what it was like. It shocked me. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't see this coming. What the heck? What's going on?
Well, get ready, because House of Flame and Shadow is all gas and no brakes. From the get-go, it's as if you're reading the last 100 pages of a Sarah J. Maas book. It's going.
I don't know if my heart can handle that. Constant beating, I'm having a heart attack. So yeah, but like I said, I'm maybe 20% of the way through that book, so it's still got a long way to go with it, but I am really enjoying it so far. Another of my borrows is 10% Happier by Dan Harris. It has it's one of those books that's 10% happier, and then it has a really long extra title. But if you look up 10% Happier by Dan Harris, it'll come up.
What kind of book is it?
It's a self-help meets memoir kind of book.
Okay.
I'm doing it on audiobook, because I found that I can't do audiobooks for these kind of The Worst Best Man or any Sarah J. Maas but I really enjoy an audiobook for like a memoir or a self-help. It's easier for me to read it that way than to read the physical book.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like a podcast in that way. So I've started doing that. I have like the one physical and then the one audio that I'm kind of listening to. So this one I'm doing on audio, still early on in it, but Dan Harris is I don't know if he still is, but he was, at least when he was talking about it, a reporter for ABC News.
Okay.
And it's basically a book about how meditation helps with like your mental health. And so he kind of takes you through the story of his life a little bit and the journey that he went on to find and how he ended up on meditation and how much it's improved his life and his like happiness, mental health kind of thing. So it's not a full memoir because the stories that he does tell about his life and what he goes into detail are like, there's a purpose to them and not just like the word vomit of this is everything that's happened to me in my life kind of thing. But it's kind of like a hybrid. So I'm just now starting to get into the part where he's like finding and discovering things about like how was like depressed and like talking to a therapist and like, you know, maybe he read like this book that he thought was going to be crazy or like that the author was like psycho crazy person for like a story that he was doing, because I guess the author was from like really highly rated and like Oprah loves him, like had her on his show kind of thing. But like when he like sees him and reads about like what the book is about, he's like, but this guy seems crazy. Like what the heck is all the hype? And so he reads the book and it's kind of like self-validating because he is crazy. But at the same time as he's reading it, it's kind of eye-opening because it's talking about like the psyche and like how the little voice in your head is the worst and how it causes you so many problems. And so now it's starting to ramp up into, okay, I don't necessarily agree with everything this guy says, but he makes some really valid points that hit home for me. So he's starting to do more research into it. And so now we're kind of finding out the journey on how he has gotten to the place that he is with his mental health and like meditation and how much it's made him better and happier. But it's very like realistic and like in his little note in the beginning, he talks about how it's not the cure-all by any means, but that's why he named the book 10% Happier, because it can help make you
I like
just
that.
10% happier than where you were.
That's really nice.
So that's been kind of enjoyable, and I've been really enjoying that so far, and I'm curious to see now that it's really starting to ramp up. We got all the backstory out of the way. His journey to find meditation, like where he's at right now.
Okay, cool.
So,
that does sound really interesting. You'll have to let me know.
I will. It's on Spotify. Okay. That's where I love the new audiobooks. On Spotify. That's been great.
You know what else I love on Spotify? This podcast called Lazy Girl Library.
And one of my favorites.
No, that is really cool that Spotify has audiobooks now that you can just listen to.
Exactly.
Great.
Speaking of which, though, for my returns, I did forget to mention it in our last episode as a borrow, but it was another audiobook that I found on Spotify. It's Jessica Simpson's memoir called Open Book. I saw it after I'd finished the Britney Spears one that we had read for our book club before we started this podcast. And I decided to give it a shot because I enjoyed the Britney Spears one. And oh my gosh, I cannot recommend this book enough.
Okay.
It was so good. I preferred it. I mean, it's hard to say you prefer a memoir because it's truly about like a person's life.
Yeah.
But the Jessica Simpson one gave me everything I was looking for from the Britney Spears one that I didn't get.
Okay.
And she's the one that narrates it to you. So that's really nice. It starts off kind of bizarre to me, and I'm like, I don't know how this is gonna go. But then she eventually like comes back to the beginning of her life and takes you through everything that's happened. But she does a fantastic job of keeping things real, and like she holds herself accountable when she needs to hold herself accountable. But when things are happening with other people, because like obviously throughout her life with Nick Lachey and like John Mayer, there are things that happen. So she talks about it, and like negative things that have happened within those relationships, but in a very respectful way of these people too. It's not just like a bashing these people. These people are like the worst, and this is why this happened to me and whatever.
That's interesting because I feel like Jessica Simpson for us, or maybe just for me, like I knew about her growing up, but I still feel like I was a little too young. So did you grow up like being a big Jessica Simpson fan?
No, I was the same way. So it was one of those things that
we're on the cusp.
With You, one of my favorite songs to this day still, is the only really Jessica Simpson song that I know. Yeah. But it's one of those things we're just a little bit too young. So I kind of heard about it, or like when you're going through the grocery store line or checkout aisle, you see all the tabloids. Like that's how I knew of Jessica Simpson. So that's funny when I'm listening to this audiobook, because I remember seeing all these stories in tabloids and things that would pop up about her, and she addresses a lot of them and talks about the behind the scenes of it all, and she gets really, really emotional. There are parts, because she's the one that's narrating it, that you could tell like she's crying and getting through it, and it makes you feel really emotional listening to her. And yeah, she takes you just through her whole life and everything up until now in this point. And she has an amazing clothing line business that I didn't even know.
I actually have Jessica Simpson shoes.
Really?
I got them in high school. Well, actually, I don't know if I have them anymore, but I did know that she had a line because I've shopped it.
I had no idea. Like I always thought, like when I heard like a Jessica Simpson line, it's like one of those like collabs with Kohl's kind of thing.
Yeah. That or like the Kylie Kendall Paxson thing.
Right, exactly. That you always see like a bunch of celebrities do. Like that's what I always thought. But then like listening to her book, it's like, no, she actually has her own brand and it's doing phenomenal. It's like $1 billion business. So she's killing it. Yep. Happy for her. Proud of you, Jessica. But yeah, it was really interesting to learn about these things, and I appreciated the way that she wrote it. It's very much like reading her diary, which I guess is like how it inspired, because she does keep diaries throughout it. But she gave you a lot more detail into things, which I think is what I was missing from like the Britney Spears one, or like she would skip over certain parts that I wanted to know more about. That one was so
sporadic, though. I feel like Britney Spears, you can't compare it to that one, because
it's true. Yeah. But it kind of like it left me wanting more. So then when I went into this one, it scratched that itch for me a little bit. And you're right, you can't compare, because it's different lives and but different people.
Britney Spears has a lot going on.
Absolutely. But it was interesting, especially because they come from the same time too.
Yeah.
So Jessica would talk about certain things like Britney Spears and like competing with her and whatever. And having just listened to that, I was like, I remember listening to this kind of thing. So yeah, overall, I gave it 4 stars. It was really, really good. I enjoyed it, and I do recommend it. But I recommend the audiobook version, because you do get her like emotional reading from it, and it really makes you like connect with her more in the story that she's telling than like reading it physically.
No, I definitely want to try that out. That sounds really cool. Well, that was our borrows and returns, and on that note, I think it's time for us to go.
Another episode in the bank. Proud of us.
This was so fun. I love Mikayla. I love talking to her. And I love that you guys get to hear us talk. But so that's it for this month's book club episode. Be sure to keep updated on our Instagram, Lazy Girl Library, and our website to hear about what our next book club book is going to be, and what our next episode is going to be about, and when it's coming. But just thank you so much for joining us, and
all the support already.
It's been so kind. I do want to ask, you guys have been so kind, and some of you have texted us your thoughts, which have been really sweet. If you would love to leave us a review, that would be really cool.
Huge help to us.
Especially because we are just baby podcasters trying to make it in the podcast realm. So that would be awesome. But thank you so much for listening, for even giving us your time of day. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Well, dear listeners, we find ourselves at the end of another episode. And remember, the Lazy Girl Library is not just a podcast, it's a community. We absolutely love hearing from fellow book lovers, so don't forget to share your thoughts and your favorite reads with us on our social media. You can find us on Instagram at Lazy Girl Library. Make sure to check out our website, lazygirllibrary.com, your one-stop shop for all things Lazy Girl. Before we go, we want to take a moment to thank all of our wonderful listeners. Whether you're listening from your cozy bed, on your way to work, or anywhere in between, thank you for making us a part of your day and for being a part of our Lazy Girl family. So keep those pages turning, keep those imaginations flourishing, and remember, the best stories are yet to be discovered. Until next time, stay lazy and happy reading.